Make every night a wonderful journey, no matter where you are. Good night, sweet dreams. The first story, from the diary of Tom's Pepper, a back alley in a big city. Empty, but for wind-blown heaps of trash. Food, papers, and dented cans. In the shadow of a doorway, a pale figure in a tattered coat. The head is scabbed and flaking as if with psoriasis. A boy is before him, on his knees, probably no more than 16. The jacket he wears was once blue nights spent sleeping rough in other. Doorways have grimed it like a garage floor. The figure rocks the boy back and forth. The boy, limp, offers no resistance. His name is not important. None of his friends knew what his parents had called him anyway. This is an anonymous place. Only the hot meat of the body matters, not the name on the streets. Everything feeds off everything else. You do what you have to survive. Strong fingers dig into the boy's neck. In rhythmic spasms of pleasure, there is almost no noise, only a soft moan rising and falling with the wind. There is the sound of suction, a grunt of satisfaction. Dribbling and dripping follow, fluid pattering on old newspaper. Move nearer and a stew of stinks is strong in the air. Rotten urine, vomit and cheap vodka. The smell of humanity bound to waste. Where the figure stands, the air is rich and rank with the smell of a butcher's shop window on a hot day. Then you notice the decay, the sick, intimate, coughed up lump of stink like a tooth gone rotten in the mouth. The man smells worse than food forgotten at the back of a fridge, sunk to brown liquid and pulp. The boy is pale, his neck lolls loosely. His mouth hangs open, a thread of saliva trailing from it. Dead eyes see nothing, or something far, far away. Scabbed paw, hands with pulsing veins, grip his shoulders tightly. Claws like to foot catheters, grey as filthy glass, have speared through the padding of his jacket and into his body cavities. A red bubbling flow races through them, sucked up by the groaning thing. It rocks back and forth in its pleasure. The dead boy's face becomes concave under the suction. The eyes retreat into the skull, the lips draw back from the teeth in an involuntary grimace. He shrinks and crumples like a deflating rubber toy with bones in. The thing shakes him harder, trying to loosen more fluids from deeper within. It sucks harder and faster. The boy's body convulses. There is a ruffling gurgle, like a child finishing a milkshake. Slowly, reluctantly, the slick claws withdraw. The body silently gives into gravity, collapsing backwards into the alley without any fuss. It has nothing of the human about it any more. The limp white carcass is just a thing. Cold veal. The creature's wreck of a face is happy. It closes the tea-bag-colored gobs that were eyes. Most of its jaw is hanging off and the lips are burst and dragged. But it smacks them anyway, as if it remembered finishing a bowl of hot soup on a winter day. The coat it wears is sopping with mucus and blood. But for that, it is a naked, rotten bulk of muscle, livid with wriggling veins. Hot blood vessels thread under the skin like fat cables, pulsing, bursting the surface. The little veins under its skin are livid and mobile as mealworms, itching. Those in its arms are swollen massively like sausage balloons, gross, taut and shiny, needing only a touch to burst them. The whole creature throbs. A little blood sprays from the head, like a leak in a garden hose, where there are shallow pink trenches ploughed in the skull. The boy tried to fight. Later, no doubt, heart and forensic investigators will turn pale when they analyze the necrotic matter under the boy's nails. The skin and flesh belongs to a body that has been dead for months. The second story, walking my dog. It was just like any other day, I suppose. I'm just a 16-year-old boy, living in his mom's apartment for the summer. I didn't do much apart from sit inside and play video games because I didn't really know anyone here. But that's beside the point. I own a dog who's 17 and still remains optimistic. He's showing signs of wearing down, but it's not getting to him. Anyway, my mom told me to walk him around the apartment complex. It's your usual complex. A bunch of buildings with gaps containing little field-like areas which led to the main office where the pool, which never gets cleaned, is found, along with the exercise room. It was nighttime, around 11:30 I believe, so I was a little frightened because the gap was pitch black, but I just went ahead and walked him. I made sure my mind wasn't playing any tricks on me, because I looked out in the distance and noticed someone there. I know what you're thinking. It's just a random person walking like I am, except he was unusually tall and was looking right at me. I rubbed my eyes and did a reality check, but he was still there. I couldn't make out his face or his clothes because of how dark it was. But then again, I was too busy running to care too much as he was running towards me first. I felt bad for my dog as he wasn't up for the run, neither was I, being lazy as I am. When I got back to the apartment, I sat in my room thinking about what I experienced, hoping it was just some crazy person, but I never saw his face and his height scared me, and I'm almost 6'3". I don't know why, but I wanted to know who that was. So, after a couple days, I built up enough courage to explore again. I understand it's dangerous, but this didn't feel like a regular person, so I decided to try to go alone, thinking my dog didn't feel like experiencing that again. I walked around for a couple minutes, breathing heavily and remembering where my place was. I looked around and I saw him, eyes wide and chest pounding. I decided to take a couple of pictures. I took 4 and I felt the need to run, so that's what I did. I uploaded the pictures to my computer, and I couldn't believe the results. The pictures were completely distorted, and I was unable to see any details. The third picture I took missed my target completely, and the fourth was taken when I was shaking heavily, meaning it was as clear as the first two. I was too scared to be angry though. I'll upload the pictures later, but I'll most likely try again. EPD. It's been for days since this incident. My dog is unbearably sick and only wants to look down our hallway. I tried to find the man again, but I had no luck. I still have the pictures, but never felt the use to upload them unless someone cared enough. I'll keep you posted about the dog soon. EPDA. It's now been a week since this incident. My dog, last night, he was running all around the house, and then fell in a seizure-like state. Blood was coming from everywhere. We weren't mortified to do anything, and we didn't even know what could be done when he died. I've been having nightmares, and I keep getting more paranoid. I told my mom, but of course, she doesn't believe me. I keep hearing noises, like there are ghosts, but there aren't. I'm scared, worried, and waiting for this summer to end. The third story, the bird. For a couple years, I was going to college in California, Pepperdine, to be precise, and one early morning, a wayward seagull flew to my window and perched itself on the little space of wall that there was between the outside of the window and the rest of the world. I couldn't help but notice it, being up all night studying for a test and my roommates all being asleep. so I decided to give it a little something to eat. I gave it a little piece of my bagel I got from the cafe by the beach and it ate it happily. Then, it flew away too. The water the entire event didn't seem very significant at the time, so I forgot about it and continued studying until I had to go to class. The next morning, around the same time as before, I heard a tapping on my window the first couple of taps. I tried to ignore, but it pestered me for 20 or so more taps, and I finally got up and went to see what it was. Lo and behold, it was the seagull again the second I opened the window. It cocked its head to the side at me, expecting food. I thought it was rather cute, but I had eaten the bagel since then, and I had no food to spare. I then hurriedly ran to the fridge, trying not to wake up my sleeping roommates, to find something to give the bird my roommates, usually out partying rather than studying, used up more energy than me, and so they ate far more food than I. There is barely anything in the fridge except for some pulled pork my roommate had gotten and put in some plastic wrap. So I unwrapped the meat, took a bit of it out, and fed it to the bird. The bird seemed to like it better than the bagel, and then it flew away, just as it did the preceding morning. For the next 3 months, the exact same routine continued. The bird tapped on my window at nearly the crack of dawn. I woke up, and I fed it. I didn't realize it, but I had been feeding it gradually bigger pinches of the pulled pork, as I wasn't really paying attention to the rations of the stuff except for when it ran out and my roommate went to get more. As such, the bird grew ever so slightly larger as the days, weeks, months progressed. As I stated before, I didn't think much of it. Also, at a certain point, in the middle of the second month, I noticed that the bird had been getting more aggressive with its tapping on my window. Again, I didn't think much of it, but I couldn't help but notice that, almost at the end of every week, the seagull had been tapping on my window harder than usual. It got to a point where one of my roommates woke up and walked to me with a baseball bat, asking if there was a robber in the house, mind you. This was a college to solve this problem. I tried listening to the sound of the bird landing near my window, which was a light plop that was quite hard to hear, and go for the window at that. Most mornings it worked. On the mornings that it did not, the bird would tap harder than ever. Eventually, a small crack formed where the tip of his beak was constantly hitting the glass. Once again, I didn't think much of it. However, my not thinking much of things would soon end. One morning, much earlier than usual, probably around 2:00 am, if my memory is correct, the bird tapped on my window harder than ever, so hard that I could hear a screeching crack in the glass. This woke me up immediately, and, surprisingly, it didn't wake any of my roommates, and I walked over to the window to see what was up. What I first saw was on the window, the once tiny crack had grown to a fairly large lightning bolt shape. Then, I saw the bird. It looked bigger than I had ever remembered it, and I remember its pupils being large and its beak being wide open. The second I stepped towards the window, its eyes fixed on me from its previously blank stare into space. The whole situation was very unsettling, and it started to get me thinking that I should not have fed the bird in the first place. But, for then, I had to digress. The seagull stared at me with those strangely unsettling eyes for a few more seconds as I opened the window, and then I spoke to it in a soft whisper as to not wake my roommates. "Hey, buddy," I said in my typical talking to animals voice. "What are you doing here so early?" The bird just continued to stare at me. its beak hanging open as if it were in shock. My eyes drifted away from the bird's eyes, which were as unsettling as ever, to its beak. It was then that I noticed almost the most unsettling thing about the bird that night. Its beak was covered in blood. At that point, I didn't exactly know what to think. Maybe it had gotten in a fight with another animal, and its beak was injured. I had no idea. Rather than helping the animal, for some reason, I instinctively went for the refrigerator for the pulled pork. I unwrapped it, took the whole batch over to the bird, and took a pinch of the pork out, as I had been doing for the past few months with the bird. At the sight of the pork, the bird looked increasingly eager and hungry. I dropped it at his feet, and he hastily gobbled it up. Then I started to walk away, as I had also been doing for the past few months, because at this point, the bird would leave. But it didn't leave. It just stood there, staring at me with those dim eyes, its bloody beak still wide open and gaping. I noticed this out of the corner of my eye, turned around to walk back towards the bird. I had found this to be quite odd. The bird had always left at this point. What was so different about that night? "Want more, buddy?" I whispered to the bird, dropping another pinch of pork, which it ate in more hastily than the last. The bird still didn't leave, and it was beginning to, dare I say it, scare me a bit, so I tried to shoo the bird out of the open window. Then the bird flew into the air, making quite a noise that still didn't manage to wake my roommate, and plucked the entire batch of pork out of my hand. It then landed, nice as you please, pork and beak, and I landed on my ass on the floor. This caused my roommates to put pillows over their heads, annoyed by the noise. I was rather peeved at the seagull now, as he was very aggressive with me, and I proceeded to shoo him out even more aggressively, quietly muttering, Go away." Annoyed with my shooing, the bird flew into the air and hovered in front of me. Whenever I made a move with my arms to shoo him out, he moved back. When I pulled back my arms, he moved forward. This continued for about a minute or two, until I finally shouted, "I don't want you here anymore. Okay, leave." Two things happened after those words were uttered from my mouth. The first was that my disoriented and tired roommates awoke from their respective slumbers and sat up to see what all the commotion was. The second was that the bird shot at my stomach like a missile, knocked me onto the floor, and proceeded to gouge my organs out with its beak. The experience was, suffice to say, terrible. The pain was absolutely agonizing. My limbs were too much in shock to even strike the bird, so I literally lay there, as the bird tore me to shreds. The only time it ever held back during the attack was when it was to swallow small bits and pieces of my bloody entrails it had ripped out of my body, going right back to the carnage afterwards. I was screaming in pure agony as I lay there, paralyzed by shock, as my roommates tried prying the bird off of me. The last thing I remember was the bird breaking an artery and passing out from the blood loss. When I woke up, it was morning, and I was in a hospital room with the bright sun shining in my eyes and bandages wrapped all around my lower torso. A few seconds after waking, a doctor walked into my room. He remarked that I was awake, and then explained that I would be fine and my missing organs weren't vital, and the ones that were did not threaten my life for now and could be easily replaced within the course of a couple weeks. Then, which shocked me even more, and my other roommates had suffered a few minor cuts and scratches, but they were fine and in the waiting room. The entire experience was quite traumatizing, to say the least, but I'm just glad everyone is okay, and that it's over. Somehow, though, still in my mind, I know that the seagull is still out there, waiting for another unfortunate soul to feed him his dinner, and then become his dinner. However, I also knew that the bird wouldn't come back to our room, as he had already made a meal of us. Therefore, in my heart, I know it isn't really over, and it will never be over, as long as that bird is still alive and flying.